Welcome to the Silicon Slopes Live. We have Dr. Debbie Eckert and Dr. Michael Kay to talk about drugs they're developing around coronavirus. Dr. Eckert, I'm going to start with you. Can you give us an update on what you're working on?
Sure, thanks. Our lab, led by Dr. Michael Kay, has a history of working on viral entry. So we study the protein that's on the outside of the virus. So in the case of coronavirus, I think we've all seen that beautiful image from the artists at the CDC that has those red proteins on the outside. So that's called the spike protein, and that's what we target. We design molecules that will bind to that spike protein while it's trying to get into a cell and block it from doing that.
Dr. Kay, what makes COVID-19 so challenging to contain?
Very good question. COVID-19 kind of threads the needle between something that spreads very easily and rapidly, but isn't so severe that it's obvious who's sick. That combination makes for very, very difficult to track and contain, especially because there's widespread reports that many people infected with COVID-19 are not symptomatic. And so they don't even realize that they're potentially spreading it. And the virus does spread pretty well, even from those asymptomatic patients.
Dr. Eckert, why does it take so long to make new drugs and get vaccines?
Right, that's a really good question. So, there's scientists all over the world that are working on this right now. And when a new virus comes out, we kind of have to go back to the drawing board oftentimes and apply all of our strategies to that new virus. So for example, in our lab, even though all of the techniques are very well known and we've had a project for HIV for a while and we have a drug that's just been approved by the FDA to start clinical trials, we have to kind of go back to the beginning and figure out how to target this very specific virus. And so you have studies that you have to do in the lab for discovery. You have to make sure that the drug works in the lab, then you have to make sure it works in animals, and then finally you have to make sure that it's safe in humans and also efficacious in humans. So it's kind of like a long road that you have to go on. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are looking at drugs that are already approved to see if they can repurpose them for this particular virus.
Dr. Kay, how would your drug compare to other ones we hear about that are being tested, like the hydrochloroquine, and these other ones like remdesivir? How would this drug be different than those?
So our drug is specifically targeting the entry process. How does the virus actually dock to a cell and enter? And so we're trying to prevent that viral entry. So that's one way it's distinct. Our approach is also very specific for the types of viruses that we're targeting. We're targeting SARS-like coronaviruses, like the original SARS and now the SARS-CoV-2. Our approach is much more customized to particular viruses rather than the inhibitors you mentioned, which are likely to be much broader, more general inhibitors. A broader general inhibitor is great because it could potentially have a lot of applications, but there's also a greater possibility of side effects because of its broad action. The specific drugs have a good possibility of having much more specific action and less side effects, but they require custom drug development for each family of viruses, so they're more challenging to develop.
Dr. Eckert, do you think there will be more pandemics as serious as COVID-19? And how do we prepare if there are?
Right. Yeah, that's a really good question. I think unfortunately, yes, there will be. We will learn a lot from this pandemic, but specifically for this particular virus, SARS-CoV-2, there's a lot of other strains of this type of virus that are in bats that have been studied in the lab and we know are capable of infecting human cells. So it's quite possible that another SARS-like coronavirus could come out and start infecting humans. And that's one of the reasons why our drug we think will be really important, because not only do we expect it to be active against this particular virus, but if another SARS-like virus were to start infecting humans again, it should be effective against that virus as well.
Dr. K, how do you get work done when you're supposed to stay at home?
It's a challenge. And so working very closely with the university, we have really clamped down essentially all of our research efforts except for anti-COVID drug development. We have one particularly heroic graduate student, Sarah Apple, who's been leading our effort. So she's been working largely alone in order to practice safe social distancing and avoid exposure. Sometimes if we have to have more than one person, we'll work in shifts so that people don't overlap. We're doing enhanced sanitation to really minimize the risk, but it is challenging because we are mostly shut down at this point.
Dr. K and Dr. Eckert, finally, I'm just wondering, we're hearing it takes, 12 to 18 months to develop a vaccine. And, who knows if it'll even, be that quick. How do you feel on the vaccine front in terms of how long it would take for something like that to get spun up?
So it is frustrating how long it takes to develop a safe and effective vaccine. 12 to 18 months is actually incredibly fast. But in order to impact the current pandemic, it is frustrating. The real challenge is that it is just very important, especially if you're giving something like a vaccine to many healthy people, that it be safe. And so in order to really make sure that you identify any potential side effects, as well as determine how effective it is, it's important to do extensive clinical trial testing before it's given to potentially billions of people. And so it just takes time to do that in a safe and effective manner.
Yeah, that makes sense. It is frustrating, but yeah, you're right. 12 to 18 months is rather quick for for a vaccine. Typically, right? That's a pretty quick turnaround. So if we can make that happen, that'd be incredible. Can I just say, Dr. Eckert and Dr. K, we sure appreciate everything the University of Utah is doing, everything the University of Utah Health is doing around testing, on combating coronavirus with the drugs you're developing here. We really appreciate all the work you're doing for Utahns. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure we'll have you on again as this thing progresses.
Thank you so much, Clint. And we are really grateful for everything that Silicon Slopes has done as well for COVID-19 and testing and informing the public what the University of Utah is doing in terms of research. So thanks for having us.
You bet.
Thank you. And I'll just say that, what we're doing is just a small part of what is going on at the university. There's a whole huge group of people working on this problem from many, many different angles. And so I encourage people to check out the U's webpage to see some of those recent efforts.
Yes, please do that, because what the University of Utah is doing around COVID-19 is nothing short of remarkable. Thank you both so much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe.
Take care.
Thank you.